So this is a 2012 Chevy Cruze. Has a 1.4 liter in it, and the initial issue was check engine light was on, and it idled roughly and was a little down on power. And it turned out to be the PCV valve inside the intake had failed, and that also led to a failure of a diaphragm in the valve cover. So I'm working on this 2012 Chevy Cruze. It's a 1.4 turbo, and had a ton of codes in it when I got it. But the main ones down here were had to do with the positive crankcase ventilation system that's built into this intake here, and they're known for failing. And when they fail, when that fails, it takes out this diaphragm in here. I'm going to pop this out. This is on the valve cover assembly. You can't really get to it, even, you know, it's built in, but I'm going to pop that open and see what the diaphragm looks like. But the way I could tell there was a problem was there was a constant, when the engine was running, there was constant vacuum being pulled on this port here. But the check engine codes are the P1101, which is the air intake, and the P0171, which is the lean condition, and the P015B, which is a oxygen sensor. But there were, like I said, there were a ton of other codes. But once I reset them and changed these parts, the codes went away. I don't have any codes right now. The other thing that had to change is this hose here. This hose goes into the intake right here, and it, I guess from the heat, it just snaps. It becomes brittle, and it broke. So I had to replace this hose assembly. And it comes with these this other little vacuum line too, and I used the Dorman replacement line, and it was these pieces snapped in with no drama. But these vacuum lines here were a little difficult to install. This one here goes underneath onto a part that's attached here, and it's you can work it from the side once it's in the car. But the Dorman one was a little fatter, and the clamp had to really work on it to get it to go in. And the same for this one down here. The Dorman rubber piece was a little fatter, and I had to work with it to several minutes to get it to with some pliers and pushing it from the backside to get it to go. But I'm going to go ahead and take a look at these parts to see what this diaphragm looks like. There's really nothing to see here on this piece, because when you look down in there, there's a big hole and a round series of circular holes. And on the new piece, you can see they're a reddish orange color. It's a different kind of rubber, like a rubber flapper. And on this one, you look in there, there's just nothing there. See if you can see that in the camera. Right in there, there's a large hole, you see that? And above it, there's a round hole with a series of holes in a round pattern. That's the piece that's missing. When on the new part, when you look down in there, what you see is that orange rubber piece that's flapping on it from the other side. It's some sort of a one-way check valve. But on this one, when you look in there, you see nothing. That means the flap, the rubber piece, has gone away, and it's no longer working as a check valve. So there's really no way to get to it. I've seen where people can have talked about plugging that and coming in here, drilling and tapping a hole here and putting in their own exterior PVC valve, but I just wanted to go with the replacement part. And the other thing, the one difference about the Dorman part to this one has threaded brass inserts for machine screws, and on the Dorman one, it just had a plastic coarse thread that bit into the plastic here with no inserts. And this is for the what holds the fuel rail down. But one tip I'll give you, when you go to take this intake off, there's a lot of debris and things that build up along this top of the this intake here, and you can't really see it very well. It's concealed, and you can. It's a good idea to blow that away with some compressed air or something. But also, once you get this off, because of the way the angle of the intake is mounted, when you pull this off, whatever's sitting up on here, whatever dirt's here, is going to fall and get directly into the valves because of the angle. And so what you want to do is, once you clean up the mating surface with the surface here that this gasket runs on, you want to inspect the intake ports, especially where the valves are. I actually used a vacuum cleaner to pull out. There was a little bit of dirt and maybe some pieces of an acorn and things like that had fallen down into the valve, and you don't want to run that through your motor when you fire it up. So you have to use a mirror and look very carefully with a flashlight, and to be on the safe side, use a vacuum cleaner and just vacuum out every port, because there may be something in there that you didn't notice. So I'm going to go ahead and pop the hood and show you where these parts are on the car, and then we will look at this diaphragm. You can hear on this one, when I raise the hood, you can hear there's a mouse or something that's built a nest inside of here, and it's storing acorns inside the hood. But let me pull this cover off here. Here's the intake assembly, and it's basically just a few bolts, but you can't really see back down in here very well because this wiring loom is in the way. And I guess you could take the fuel injector rail off. I didn't take it off until after I brought it out with it, the intake. But that you can also get some things to drop down in that way too if you actually do remove it before. And so and this is the valve cover that you have to replace the entire thing, just because of the diaphragm issue there. And another tip when you replace this valve cover here, there's a very specific sequence to the torque pattern of these bolts. It's pretty much just like torquing down a head. You have to be very careful to draw it down evenly and not pull one side down and then try to pull the other. And on mine, actually, this piece of plastic here, this carrier, I didn't notice it, but this little lip was off to the side and it got trapped under the valve cover. And then I had to pull it back up and pop this out of the way. But you have to be careful and make sure that when you are tightening down the valve cover, that you don't have a wire or something that's underneath and becoming captive. And there's several bolts. These are Torx. You can see on the old one here, the bolts stay with it. And the gasket is also included in the Dorman kit. And on mine, there was silicone on this gasket all the way. You can see there's remnants of it here all the way along in this part. And it's so I also did the same thing. I put silicone down. Mostly on these corners is where it needs to be, where there's a junction between the valve cover and the head. But I went ahead and did it just like the factory did. You can see there's some silicone from the factory all along it. And the diaphragm I'm going to be investigating is right up under here. I don't really see a way to get to it from this side, but I'm going to be cutting it apart here. It looks like this might pop off, and then I can check out the diaphragm on this side. But the hose is, this hose here, this is the one that broke. It broke right in here when I tried to remove it. I guess it was hardened from all the heat. It snapped off right there. And so I had to replace it. I thought about just repairing it, but this car is going to be used in another state, pretty far away, and I didn't want to create something that was could be a problem later, so I went ahead and fixed it with all the proper parts. But the hose runs around down in here, and the bigger connectors are pretty easy to get to, but the smaller connectors were a bit of a challenge, just because they didn't fit the clamps very well. But overall, it's a pretty easy fix. But basically, the P positive crankcase valve inside the intake, when it fails, it actually pops the diaphragm here, and you get a vacuum pulled here constantly. And so to remove the valve cover, first you take these two Torx here, and you pull off the this coil pack here. There's 4 spark plug boots down in there. And while I had that off, I went ahead and replaced the spark plugs. They looked like they were been in there a while, and they were NGK, so I knew somebody had replaced them before. So I went back with the GM spark plug, and it runs pretty good. I've driven it 4 or 5 hours and reset all the codes, and it had permanent codes after I replaced the parts. I could not reset those with a scanner, but after driving the car, it reset itself. It normalized and set itself. So it's not that hard to do, the repair. And basically just plastic parts that you have to remove and replace. So I'm going to try and open it up with this cutter here. Let's see if I can just pry it up enough to have a look at it. There we go. So there's the rubber diaphragm. That's you can see it's got some I don't know what that is. Looks like a spider got pulled into it. And there's the hole right there. Pretty large gaping hole. And you know, it's too bad they didn't make this removable, because it wouldn't be that hard to change that thing. Feels like it's got a spring on it.